America loves to pretend women want less. But that illusion has nothing to do with biology, it's built from fear. Not women's fear. Men's. Men fear women's desire because women's desire is not predictable. Not simple. Not linear. Not controllable the way patriarchal mythology wants it to be. So society built a convenient lie. Women want less. A lie polished over centuries. A lie whispered into religion, culture, etiquette, family, expectations. A lie dressed as purity, virtue, and good behavior. Not because women are naturally less hungry, but because the world is terrified of what happens when a woman finally stops apologizing for wanting. That's the philosophical root of this argument, not biology, not hormone charts, not relationship theories, but the ancient fear of female desire as a destabilizing force. Men have always controlled what they feared. Women's voices, women's choices, women's freedom, and most of all, women's appetite. Because appetite is power. And a woman with desire is a woman who cannot be controlled through shame. But here's the truth America avoids with all its moral gymnastics. Women do not want less. Women are taught to want quietly. They are conditioned from childhood to swallow their hunger like poison, smile like everything is fine, and call suppression maturity. Men are encouraged to express desire. Women are trained to hide it. That's not biology, that's architecture. The architecture of a culture built on the terror that female desire might actually be deeper, sharper, and more psychologically complex than male desire. Men seek release. Women seek meaning. And meaning is far more dangerous than release. A man's desire may spark quickly, like dry wood catching flame. A woman's desire is tectonic, slow, invisible, building pressure underneath everything until the moment the ground shakes. When it erupts, it's not a spark. It's an earthquake. No one wants to admit this. Because to admit it would mean admitting that the power dynamic Western culture depends on is based on a lie. A woman who desires with full awareness is not submissive. Not fragile. Not mild. Her desire is not a question. It's an answer. And answers are dangerous in a world built on keeping women uncertain of themselves. So America performed a trick. It turned women's hunger into shame. And men's hunger into normality. Watch any American girl grow up. You'll see the training happen in real time. Be nice. Be good. Don't say that. Don't dress like that. Don't act like that. Don't want too much. Don't ask for too much. Don't show too much interest. Don't admit desire. Don't scare the men. Everything is a warning. Nothing is an invitation. By adulthood, most women aren't wanting less. They're suppressing more. Women want deeply. But they want safely. They want with context, connection, psychological clarity. Not because they are cold, but because they have learned the cost of wanting in a world built to punish female appetite. America didn't teach women to want less. America taught women that wanting too much makes them targets of judgment, gossip, moral policing, character assassination, and male insecurity. So they internalize silence as survival. They don't lose desire. They hide it in the attic of the self. But anything hidden grows teeth. Female desire, when repressed for too long, doesn't disappear. It becomes subterranean. It becomes symbolic. It becomes philosophical. It becomes a force that shapes a woman's entire emotional landscape. Because desire is not just physical. Desire is identity. Desire is agency. Desire is the language of the self asking for expansion. When you suppress desire, you suppress selfhood. And America has been suppressing women's selfhood for centuries, politely, subtly, violently, beautifully, strategically. Then it has the audacity to call women mysterious, hard to read, complicated, slower, less hungry. No. Women are not mysterious. Women are muzzled. Men's desire is loud because society lets it be loud. Women's desire is quiet because society taught them silence is the only safe volume. But underneath, the hunger never goes away. It adapts. It evolves. It deepens. Women desire differently because they have learned to survive differently. A man learns desire as entitlement. A woman learns desire as negotiation. A man learns desire as instinct. A woman learns desire as risk assessment. And in that difference lies the greatest philosophical misunderstanding of our time. Men assume women want less. Because women show less. But women show less. Because the world gave them consequences for showing more. This is why the real question was never, do women want less than men? The real question is, what would women want if they were never punished for wanting? That is the question America fears. That is the question patriarchy cannot survive. That is the question men don't want answered honestly. Because if female desire were freed from shame, freed from judgment, freed from centuries of moral repression, men would finally have to face something far more intimidating than female sexuality. Female autonomy. A woman who knows what she wants. Emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, and is unafraid to want it, is the most powerful creature in the Western world. Not because of seduction, not because of beauty, but because of clarity. Clarity is power, and desire gives clarity. That is why female desire has been buried for centuries under religion, culture, propriety, and social pressure. Not because it is weak, but because it is too powerful. A woman who desires on her own terms cannot be controlled. She chooses. She decides. She initiates. She rejects. She transforms. She breaks the hierarchy. And so the system lied. It said women want less. But what it meant was, we want women to want less. Because wanting less keeps them manageable. Wanting less keeps them compliant. Wanting less keeps them predictable. Wanting less keeps them afraid. But the truth is simple and terrifying. Women do not want less. They have simply been forced to want quietly. And nothing quiet stays quiet forever. If you want to understand female desire, don't study biology first. Study silence. Silence tells you more about women than any hormone chart ever will. Silence is where women bury everything society refuses to let them say out loud. Silence is where female appetite survives the cultures built to suffocate it. America doesn't just silence women. It disguises the silence as virtue. Women are told that restraint is class. That compliance is elegance. That modesty is morality. That self-denial is femininity. What a beautifully packaged prison. Men have no idea how deep this programming runs. Because men never had to earn the right to want. Men were never punished for hunger. Men never learned desire as danger. Women did. Women learned that wanting too loudly makes you unladylike. That wanting the wrong person makes you reckless. That wanting at the wrong time makes you dramatic. That wanting too openly makes you easy. That wanting too honestly makes you intimidating. America has 10,000 words to shame a woman's desire. And maybe 2 words to validate it. Usually whispered, never shouted. This is why female desire goes underground. Not dead. Underground. Buried beneath expectations, etiquette, self-protection, and generational fear. Hidden beneath roles, daughter, wife, mother, good girl, good woman, roles designed not to empower the self but to police it. Female desire becomes the shadow self, and women grow up learning to negotiate with it the way hostages negotiate for survival. A woman doesn't ask herself, what do I want? She asks, what am I allowed to want without being punished? Yet America insists that women want less. How convenient. When you condition a population to fear its own hunger. Of course they appear hungrier less often. Of course they appear quieter. Of course they appear controlled. Suppression always looks like absence to the people doing the suppressing. Men misinterpret that silence as disinterest. But silence is not disinterest. Silence is strategy. Silence is survival psychology. Silence is the armor women wear against patriarchy disguised as politeness. An American woman grows up absorbing thousands of tiny warnings. Don't be too much. Don't be too loud. Don't be too emotional. Don't be too forward. Don't be too confident. Don't be too sexual. Don't be too honest. Don't be too independent. Everything is too. Except silence. Silence is never too much. Silence is rewarded. So women learn to mute themselves. Mute their needs. Mute their hunger. Mute their instincts. Mute the parts of themselves that threaten masculine fragility. And after decades of muting, America points at women and says, see, they want less. No, they've been trained to disappear. And they disappeared so well. People forgot they had a presence at all. But nothing that powerful stays contained forever. Female desire is not a candle, it's a fault line. Suppress it long enough and you don't get quietness, you get earthquakes. Here's the philosophical truth America avoids. Women don't have less desire. They have desire with memory. Desire shaped by everything that has ever happened to them, every warning they've ever heard, every judgment they've ever absorbed. Female desire is never spontaneous. It's accumulated, layered, contextual, symbolic, psychologically loaded. While male desire often follows urgency, female desire follows meaning. And meaning is heavier than urgency. Meaning is deeper. Meaning is dangerous. Male desire wants release. Female desire wants recognition. One is physical. The other is existential. When a woman desires, she is not seeking escape. She is seeking expansion. She is seeking the dismantling of the walls she was forced to build. She is seeking the restoration of the self she buried to survive. That's why society fears female desire. Because if women allowed themselves to want fully, they would dismantle the structure built on their self-denial. They would stop apologizing, stop shrinking, stop bending, stop dimming. They would become sovereign. And sovereignty is incompatible with patriarchy. This is why female desire historically has been treated like a threat. And threats must be controlled. Religion did it with guilt. Culture did it with shame. Families did it with rules. Society did it with labels. Men did it with insecurity. Because once a woman realizes she wants more, she also realizes she deserves more. And a woman who believes she deserves more is unmanageable. She stops tolerating bare minimum affection. She stops accepting emotional crumbs. She stops playing roles written for her by men afraid of her autonomy. She stops believing she exists to be chosen. And starts choosing. Women who choose are terrifying to a culture built on male entitlement. That's why America downplays female desire. Not because women lack hunger, but because women who understand their hunger stop being quiet. And quiet women are easier to control than honest women. Here's the real philosophical twist. Male desire is linear. Female desire is recursive. Male desire seeks the object. Female desire seeks the context. Male desire lights up quickly. Female desire lights up deeply. Male desire is about direction. Female desire is about dimension. And dimension is a far more powerful force than direction. America pretends women want less because it cannot fathom the depth of what women actually want. They want intensity with safety, freedom with security, connection with truth, desire without fear. This duality is not weakness. It's complexity, something American culture has never handled well. Men accuse women of being hard to read. But that's because male desire is one note. And female desire is a symphony. The problem isn't that women are complicated. The problem is that America only knows how to listen to drums. Female desire is not less, it is more. More layered. More psychological. More symbolic. More rooted in the unconscious. More tied to memory, identity, emotional resonance. To say women want less is like saying the ocean is smaller than rain because it doesn't fall from the sky. It's not smaller. It's deeper. Women's desire is not missing. It's submerged. And America is terrified of what happens when the ocean finally rises. Women aren't mysterious. They're edited. Edited by culture. Edited by expectation. Edited by the need to survive in a world that punishes female appetite more than it punishes male irresponsibility. If you take away all the editing, all the masking, all the social conditioning, all the rules, you don't get a woman who wants less. You get a woman who finally recognizes herself. That recognition terrifies people. Because a woman who recognizes her own hunger does not negotiate her worth. She does not shrink. She does not seek permission to exist. She does not wait to be chosen like a product on a shelf. She chooses. She decides. She walks toward what she wants with clarity, and clarity is the enemy of every system built on making women doubt themselves. This is the real reason patriarchy needed to invent the myth of female passivity. Not to protect women, but to protect the hierarchy. Female desire is disruptive. It breaks roles. It breaks patterns. It breaks the psychological scaffolding that keeps men in the comfort of predictability. Male desire is treated as nature. Female desire is treated as danger. But what if the truth is the opposite? What if male desire is the simpler force, impulsive, straightforward, instinct-driven, while female desire is the deeper one? The one tied to identity, vulnerability, autonomy, consciousness. What if the real danger is not women wanting too much, but women finally admitting how much they've wanted all along? That's the philosophical question no one in America wants to ask. Because America depends on women performing restraint. It depends on women pretending their appetite is smaller than it is. It depends on women carrying the emotional labor of pretending men are braver than they actually are. Let's tell the truth plainly. A woman's desire has never been the problem. Men's fear of it has. If a woman shows interest too quickly, Men call her clingy. If she shows interest too slowly, men call her cold. If she shows interest too selectively, men call her arrogant. If she shows interest too clearly, men call her overwhelming. It's not that women are too much. It's that men have never built a psychological framework to handle female autonomy. So the culture adapted, not by helping men evolve emotionally, but by forcing women to shrink themselves down. Look at the language America uses to describe women who want clearly. Intense. Crazy. Obsessed. Desperate. Trouble. High maintenance. Emotional. Too much. But the same behavior in men is called confidence. Charm. Passion. Masculinity. Drive. See how the game is rigged? Female desire is pathologized. Male desire is normalized. Female desire is policed. Male desire is excused. Female desire is shamed. Male desire is rewarded. This is not a difference of biology. This is a difference of permission. And permission is the most dangerous form of power. If you want to understand the truth about who desires more, you must understand who has been allowed to desire more. Men have been allowed. Women have been denied. That alone skews the entire perception of hunger. It's like measuring someone's thirst after forcing him not to drink for years, then concluding they must not be thirsty. No. They're thirsty. They've simply adapted to survive dehydration. Women have adapted to survive silence. They've learned to reroute desire inward, to intellectualize it, to spiritualize it, to turn it into poetry, into art, into longing, into sensitivity, into self-doubt, into self-control. Not because they lack appetite, but because society punishes women who show it. A woman expressing desire openly threatens too many narratives. The narrative that women are passive. The narrative that men must initiate. The narrative that men lead and women follow. The narrative that men are the ones who want more. If women wanted more, if women wanted as intensely and visibly as men, then the gender hierarchy would collapse. That is why the myth exists. Not because it's true, but because it's useful. Useful to men who fear not being enough. Useful to cultures that rely on women's compliance. Useful to religions that frame women as temptresses yet demand purity. Useful to families that expect daughters to behave but forgive sons for everything. Let's talk about something America avoids. Women aren't inherently quieter. They've been trained to fear the consequences of their own volume. Shame taught them silence. Fear taught them restraint. Judgment taught them caution. Generations taught them to prioritize other people's comfort over their own desire. And then America had the nerve to accuse them of wanting less. Women don't want less. They want differently. And different has been wrongfully framed as less. Female desire is not impulsive, it is strategic. Not because women are calculating, but because they've had to calculate every step of their existence. Men desire from freedom. Women desire from fear. Men want without consequences. Women want while bracing for them. Men want openly. Women want in code. Men want in daylight. Women want in shadow. But shadow does not mean absence. Shadow means protection. Shadow means survival. Shadow means boundaries. Female desire lives in the shadow because that's the only place it could live safely. But desire kept in shadow becomes sharp. It becomes deep. It becomes multi-layered. It becomes philosophical. It becomes identity-level hunger. The kind that doesn't fade. The kind that doesn't evaporate. The kind that shapes a woman's inner world. Male desire is a flame. Female desire is a tide. One rises quickly. The other pulls whole coastlines with it. But the culture mistakes the absence of flames for the absence of heat. Women burn internally. Men burn externally. Which fire is stronger? The one everyone sees? Or the one no one knows how to put out? Men have mistaken silence for emptiness. But silence is not emptiness, silence is containment. And containment is pressure. And pressure is power. This is why so many men are destabilized by a woman who finally speaks her desire plainly, because they are not used to the full force of a hunger that has been compressing for years. Female desire does not explode. It unfolds. It reveals. It expands like a truth long overdue. And nothing is more dangerous to a culture built on subtraction than a woman who rediscovers addition. This is why the world has always asked women to want less. Because wanting more would force the world to evolve. Women would force the world to evolve simply by wanting honestly. That's the threat. That's the fear. That's the reason America insists, desperately, violently, obsessively, on pretending female desire is smaller than it is. Because once a woman knows what she wants, she stops living life on silent mode. She stops offering polite half smiles to keep the peace. She stops minimizing her needs to remain likable. She stops apologizing for taking up emotional space that was always hers. She stops performing femininity like a role, and starts living femininity like a truth. And a woman living in truth. Not performance. Not programming. Not fear. Not apology. Is unstoppable. She is not a threat to men. She is a threat to the version of masculinity that relies on women never stepping into their full appetite. Because female appetite, emotional, intellectual, existential, is not a weakness. It is the engine of almost every revolution in human history. Men conquered the world. Women kept the world alive. Men built monuments. Women built meaning. Men made noise. Women made truth. But the moment women direct that truth inward, toward themselves, everything shifts. Because desire is not just wanting something. Desire is acknowledging the part of you that refuses to shrink anymore. Female desire, when freed, becomes clarity. Clarity about boundaries, clarity about identity, clarity about what matters and what must be left behind. It becomes the compass that points a woman toward her real life instead of the life she was conditioned into. And clarity is the one thing patriarchy fears even more than power. Because once a woman sees clearly, she notices everything. The imbalance. The expectations. The emotional labor. The double standards. The invisible weight women carry just to function. The systems that benefit from her silence. The men who confuse dominance with worth. The religion that confuses purity with obedience. The culture that confuses femininity with sacrifice. The families that confuse respect with endurance. The workplaces that confuse exploitation with loyalty. Clarity makes the invisible visible. And once you see the architecture, you can dismantle it. This is why the world needs women to believe they want less. Because wanting less keeps them from asking for more. And asking for more forces everything to change. A woman who wants loudly cannot be domesticated. A woman who wants clearly cannot be manipulated. A woman who wants consciously cannot be gaslit. A woman who wants honestly cannot be controlled. And that is the real reason the myth exists. Not because it is accurate, but because it maintains order. False order. Order built on suppression isn't order, it's fear wearing a uniform. And fear runs deep in America. Fear of female anger. Fear of female intelligence. Fear of female independence. But above all, fear of female desire. Because female desire is not logical. Not linear. Not predictable. Not contained. Not obedient. It is wild in a way society cannot script. Female desire stretches the mind. It challenges the ego. It demands emotional depth. It reveals insecurities. It shatters facades. It burns away illusions. Men call women complicated, but that's only because they've never had to build desire around danger. Male desire is allowed to be simple. Female desire is forced to be strategic. And survival-shaped desire always runs deeper. When a woman desires, she does not simply want. She evaluates, she senses, she reads the room, she identifies who is real and who is performing. She chooses what makes her feel alive, not what makes her feel safe according to society's checklist. Because safety means something different to women. Safety is not an environment. Safety is a person. Safety is a presence. Safety is someone whose energy doesn't threaten the parts of her she's spent her entire life protecting. And once she finds safety, her desire is not quiet. It is not small. It is not hesitant. It is total. Female desire is totality. Not percentage. Not fragments. Not glimpses. And totality destabilizes the culture that thrives on women being partial versions of themselves. That culture expects women to be selective, modest, measured, not because these traits are natural, but because they are manageable. A woman who wants in totality requires reciprocity in totality. And patriarchy is allergic to reciprocity. Men who have been raised to believe women exist to supply emotional warmth panic when faced with a woman who demands emotional depth in return. Because they were never taught to cultivate depth, only to expect it from others. So they say women are too much. When what they mean is, I was never taught to meet you at the level where you naturally exist. Then they create another myth. Women are hard to understand. No. Women have been easy to understand for thousands of years. People just haven't listened without a filter of stereotypes. Female desire is not mysterious when you remove the cultural noise. It is simply different. deeper, more layered, more intimate with the psyche. Men desire from the body outward. Women desire from the psyche inward. Male desire is ignition. Female desire is combustion. One sparks. The other consumes. The problem is not that women want less. The problem is that women have been taught their hunger is a threat. To men, to morality, to religious structures, to gender roles, to family dynamics, to the illusion that men are the primary bearers of desire. But here is the truth America is not ready to admit. Female desire, when fully awakened, is stronger than male desire, not because it is louder, but because it is truer. It comes from depth, from memory, from meaning, from psychological resonance, from the parts of a woman she was forced to bury just to survive. When those buried parts rise, desire becomes the language of resurrection. It becomes the reclamation of self. It becomes the undoing of shame. It becomes the end of apology. It becomes the beginning of honesty. And honesty is ultimately what patriarchy fears. Because patriarchy survives on lies. The lie that men want more. The lie that women want less. The lie that male desire is natural and female desire is conditional. The lie that women are passive. The lie that men lead. The lie that women follow. The lie that women are emotional. The lie that men are logical. The lie that women need security. The lie that men need freedom. Lies built on fear. Fear built on insecurity. Insecurity built on the knowledge that if women ever desired freely, men would have to grow up emotionally. Men would have to build depth. Men would have to evolve past entitlement. Men would have to offer more than presence. They would have to offer truth. And truth terrifies those who've only ever known dominance, not intimacy. So they create an entire culture where female desire is kept small. Quiet, polite, apologetic, regulated. But here is the philosophical paradox. The more you suppress desire, the more powerful it becomes. Anything forced into the subconscious becomes mythic. Anything buried becomes symbolic. Anything silenced becomes sacred. Female desire became sacred the moment it was forbidden. Not sacred in the religious sense. Sacred in the psychological sense. Sacred as the core of autonomy. Sacred as the root of identity. Sacred as the pulse of the inner world women were taught to hide. And now, in modern America, this sacred force is rising. Women are starting to unlearn silence. Unlearn shame. Unlearn fear. Unlearn appeasement. Unlearn generational scripts. They are learning to want again. Not quietly. Not apologetically. Not through metaphor. But directly. And the world is shaking. Because once women reclaim desire, they reclaim everything. Reclaiming desire means reclaiming voice. Reclaiming voice means reclaiming identity. Reclaiming identity means reclaiming boundaries. Reclaiming boundaries means reclaiming power. And a woman with power is not the woman patriarchy prepared for. She is the woman patriarchy prayed would never exist. A woman who desires with clarity is not dangerous because of sexuality, but because of sovereignty. She becomes fully human in a world that only benefits from her being half. And when she becomes fully human, she stops being manageable. This is why the most revolutionary act a woman can commit in America today is simple. To want without shame. To want without fear. To want without apology. To want without permission. Because that single act undoes centuries of conditioning. In one breath. Female desire is not a question. It is an answer. And the world is terrified of what happens when women start answering for themselves.